Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Altispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour. To be a part of the program, it is a free call. 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalai. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah show kicks off this hour. So we are approaching episode 500. This show went live on April 3rd, 2017. So it's been 9 years since we've been doing the Ask Noah show. And in the very first episode, I made a point, and the reason that I made a point to do so was because I had thought about it long and hard leading up to episode 1. I made a point that there was not a single Windows or Mac OS box in the studio, and there never would be. And 9 years later, I can sit here and tell you that's accurate. That this show has run 100% on free and open source technology. Every computer in here runs some manner of Linux. Now, here's the other winning story of Linux. The vast majority of the machines are still on 1604. Because that was the LTS that was available to me in 2017 when the studio went on the air. I can count on one hand the amount of times that we haven't been able to do a live show out of this studio on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. And of those handful of times, one of them was when our Axia mixer went out. And my boys at Telos were kind enough to offer me a loaner while we sent the Telos board in. The Axia mixer got repaired and it came back. By the way, that Axia mixer runs Linux. Oh, by the way, in those 10 years, it went from a hardware appliance to the latest version of the Telos Axia runs in a Docker container. And it's got a web UI and it's super fancy and all the rest of it. Why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all of this because as we approach episode 500, we are trying to think of exactly what to do and exactly how we do it going forward. If this show was important back in 2017 when I started it, from the perspective of, hey, you want a guy who eats, lives, and breathes Linux. I dog food everything I tell you on this program. So when you write in, or when you call in, or when you join us in the interactive mumble room, or when you join us in the interactive chat room, the answers that you're getting are the answers from somebody who eats, sleeps, and breathes this stuff. And I would tell you Providence aligned me with Steve Ovens, who does what I do, except he does it for Fortune 500 companies. But the both of us eat, live, and breathe Linux. And I think a theme that I maybe didn't have as well defined on episode 1, but I'll definitely have it dialed in by episode 500. There is a growing lost art of how to leverage technology. And I believed that to be true in 2016. I just didn't know how true it was. So when we launched the show on April 3rd of 2017, I started with kind of that blind vision, knowing what the destination was. And as I sit here in 2026, it's never been more important. Today, the vast majority of your family members, if you sit down and talk to them over dinner and ask them how they manage their technology, a high percentage of you are going to hear that they go into the red glowing box, the blue glowing box, or the pink glowing box. And they ask the sales representative who meets them in whatever their chosen flavor of the glowing box is to offer them some technical assistance. They pay a monthly fee to have access to the services of the blue glowing box, the red glowing box, or the pink glowing box. They're given that access to that service. They choose from the available devices for sale in the glowing box stores, and then they walk out. They don't know how that technology works. They don't care how that technology works. Oh, I got a new box and I need my photos from my old one to my new one. Go into the glowing box and ask the salesperson to move it from that device to the next one. Get the little swirling photo thing that goes on to capture the from one thing to another. Woo, and take a picture of it in there. Now we just sit and wait. Actually, you know what we'll do? We'll run next door and we'll have dinner. We'll go have lunch while the glowing box manages my technology for me. And if those glowing boxes were to go away, those glowing stores with their bright, pretty white counters and the red glow and the blue glow or the pink glow, whatever your chosen flavor is, if they were to go away, the photos those people have would be lost. The service on which those devices run would cease to exist. The devices themselves would be unmanageable because they don't have administrative access to it. What I hope you learn here when you show up week after week after week after week is how to leverage the technology to its full potential. How the thing works underneath the hood. And we are rapidly getting to a point where it's the lost art of computers, where nobody understands how these, not nobody, but the average human being walking around planet Earth doesn't even begin to comprehend how this stuff works, where the data is stored, how it's processed, how secure is it, who has access to it, how you get to it, how you set the thing up, how you would host it. They don't know. And the worst, I don't know what's worse, that they don't know or that they don't care. So Steve has been a remarkable force ticking at the background saying, let's go a little bit even deeper. Let's understand this even a little bit more. Let's go ahead and talk about how advanced and how amazing this stuff is and how everybody has access to it. The same technology that powers the blue glowing store and the red glowing store and the pink glowing store, the same technology that runs all that back-end infrastructure is likely available to you in a Git repository somewhere. Because increasingly the entire world runs on open source. So hear me loud and clear when I tell you what I thought was true on October 3rd of 2017 when we started this program is way more true today. And if there was a value in getting that message out on October 3rd of 2017, it's way more important today. So Steve and I are talking about ways that we can grow the show, that we can promote the show, that we can do more to the show, that we can take the show on the road and bring it to different places. But there are just some logistical things that we have to work through. Again, I draw your attention back to, I have machines in the studio that, admittedly, they've been faithfully doing it, but they've been running since 2016. It's time that they get an upgrade. It's time that we install some new software at the least, if not cycle some drives and that sort of thing. So here's what we're planning to do. Episode 500 is going to air August 4th, 2026. We're going to do that in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So if you have the ability to get to Minneapolis, St. Paul, I invite you to join us Tuesday, August 4th in Minneapolis, St. Paul. The exact location we are still working on. But the time will be 6 p.m. Central, for sure. What we are going to do between now and then is going to be a little different. We have 2 episodes between now and episode 500. And if you're doing the math, we've got a lot more weeks in between now and August 4th than we have episodes available to hit that 500 mark. So here's what we're going to do. This is going to be the episode that we record in June. We're going to do one more episode in July. And then we're going to resume the normal schedule on August 4th. And that does a couple of things. The first thing it does, I rarely take a day off. We do this show and try to do it live every week at 6 p.m. Central. Why do we do it that way? So that you can participate. If you want technical help, coming up on 10 years, there's been a phone number that you can call and a place that you can get two experts in the industry that'll come alongside you and answer your questions. But that means that I cannot take the studio off the air to do things like cycle drives, reinstall operating systems, troubleshoot the gargantuan amount of problems that are going to follow. So we're going to take some time to do that. We've got some really awesome interviews that we were able to capture with some very highly technical people. The problem, if you want to call it that, it's so technical and it's so deep that if we just ran it, we feel like we'd gloss your eyes over. So we're going to do a little bit of massaging to set some things up, to edit that audio in so that it's more palatable. But again, that takes time. So we're going to take some time to do those things. And then coming up on August 4th, 2026, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central, we're going to do the show live from the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. We'll give the final details in episode 499. We'll have those available for you in the show notes at podcast.asknoahshow.com. Oh, by the way, while we're at it, asknoahshow.com probably needs a rehaul, an overhaul. It's been running the same static HTML for 10 years. Probably time to update that too. So, to recap, show's not going anywhere. It's going to grow, if anything. We're going to keep doing it. It's going to be awesome. We're going to try to take it on the road. We're going to try to be in the places that you are so that you can come and we can shake your hand and meet with you and do those sorts of things. But we're going to take a pause for the next couple of weeks as we work our way up to episode 500 so that we can make sure that episode 501 was better than episode 1. So that we can make sure the next 500 episodes are better than the first 500 episodes. Hope to see you there in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Tuesday, August 4th, 6 p.m. Central. Avri Chen-Roth. He is a senior DevOps engineer and a guest this hour on the Ask Noah Show. Avri, welcome into the program.
Hey, Noah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for making the time to be here. So I understand that, so you had reached out and you had said, hey, you guys are having a conversation on the Ask Noah Show about OAuth, and you have some expertise and some experience with Pocket ID and OpenID Connect. So I guess give me kind of the background. What was it that led you to understanding what the problem was? And then tell me a little bit about your experience and the path and the journey that you were on to discover the concept of unified authentication.
Yeah, sure. So I think it started in my home lab and my family unit. So I manage a bunch of services. I have Nextcloud, Image, and a Home Assistant, and a bunch of other services. So it was getting kind of annoying to manage users for my wife and kids. For each one of these services, I had to create users. I have to give them permission. I have to, and then if they need a password reset, then which service it is, and I had to do all that. And I figured there must be a better way to do this. And in the corporate world, in the enterprise world, a lot of companies have used commercial solutions like Oct, which is like a software as a service that handles authentication and can do pretty much this. Like it can do authentication for multiple services. Obviously, I'm not going to pay for Okta for a family. So that was the beginning of my journey with like one authentication to rule them all, to have like one thing that can do all these things. And there's a bunch of solutions that can do that. But let's first talk about like the I think what's the standard these days for authentication? So I've been in the industry for 20 plus years, and back in the day, everything was LDAP and Active Directory. I think that was the norm, and almost every service used to integrate with either Active Directory or LDAP, and Active Directory is LDAP behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So these days, it seems like the authentication standard is OpenID Connect, or OIDC for short, and it's built on top of OAuth 2.0. Like everywhere that you see, sign in with Google, log in with Apple, all these things, they use OIDC behind the scenes. So I was starting to read and look into it, and it looks like all the services that we're using were also using OIDC. The way, kind of like the quick rundown of how OIDC works is that instead of creating new passwords, the application redirects you to an identity provider like Google or Pocket ID that we're going to talk about here. And once you log into that service, the OIDC service signs your request with the token that you were redirected with, and then the server gets that information back and it logs you in. So there's no like traditional password verification. It's just like token back and forth. So like why OIDC is such a good thing, because it lets you kind of like have a single sign-on, one server that you like, one place that you log in, and it can log you into all kinds of services. From a security standpoint, the app doesn't have anything that it has to save, right? So when I used to work at one of the big universities in the US, we used to have a bunch of students spin all kinds of applications. It's before AI, right? Yeah, in today's day and age with AI, it's even worse because you don't know how the application stores the password. It could be a secure way, an encrypted way, and it could be clear text. So the nice thing is the app doesn't have anything to save because it doesn't store any password. And it's the new industry standard, and it's open, so that's a really good thing. Kind of like the way Linux is open. I kind of think of it like an OpenID Connect is like the Linux of authentication.
So it's like this, it's like a unified standard, and then there are different software applications that allow you to implement it or roll it out.
Yeah, so the application has to implement that standard in the application, but because it's so common, then I'm pretty sure every language today has a library that does the implementation, or at least simplifies the implementation. So I think most applications that I've had to deal with, either in my home lab or in general, you can even connect external services. Like there's a video out there that how to set Tailscale to authenticate with OpenID Connect to like a third party like provider, kind of like Pocket ID, or you can even do it with Office 365. The similar way that they can authenticate with Okta, they can also authenticate with Pocket ID. But obviously that will require you to have like your Pocket ID externally accessible so these services can access it. And one other thing that I really liked about Pocket ID is that it doesn't, so you can have OIDC providers that use username and password.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them do. So you still authenticate to them regularly. You enter your username and password. One of the things that I really liked about Pocket ID is that it uses passkeys rather than username and password. So there's nothing to forget, so to speak. So I'll I'll explain a little bit about passkeys if you're not familiar with it, or to the people listening that are not very familiar with it.
Yeah.
So passkeys are also kind of like a new industry standards that was created out of the, I guess, necessity that the passwords are awful. You forget them, you reuse them. They get, in a they can cause like breaches, and it also depends on how safely the whoever you're logging into, how they store their password, what we talked about earlier. So passkeys are a new standard that allows you to authenticate, and you there are every major like device provider now support them, so you can use like if you use your mobile device or your mobile device, you can store passwords on them, and then usually like you need to protect your device in some way, either with like biometric fingerprint or face ID or like a device pin, or you can store passwords in a password manager like Bitwarden or 1Password or something like that. And you can also, the recent YubiKeys also support storing passkeys. So you can have the YubiKey store the passkey, or other like hardware devices that can store these kind of thing. And passkeys are very simple. They're pretty much like basic cryptography. That's what makes them great. So you have a public key that you give to the server, and you have a private key that you store for yourself, either on the device or in a password manager or something like that. And another great thing about passkeys is they're per site, or you can even have multiple per site. So but you cannot use a passkey like the passkey is tied to a specific domain. So you can't, let's say if you created a passkey for google.com, you can't use the same thing. Like it wouldn't even let you use it on, let's say, facebook.com. So there's no, like the traditional like password rehashing or like using the same password for multiple services. So it's immune to phishing. There's nothing to phish, right?
Can I ask, how do you how do you back up passkeys? So like if you're, well, actually, before I ask that, what do you like for using passkeys? You use like a hardware token, you use Bitwarden, what do you prefer?
So I use a mix. So I use Bitwarden to store my passkeys, but also for every service, so you're not limited to, it's not like a password. You're not limited to one passkey per service. So I usually have an emergency YubiKey in case like something happened to me and my wife or my kids have to log into something. So I usually onboard like three things. So I have two YubiKeys and the Bitwarden for every service that I use. That's not Pocket ID, because Pocket ID I can log into Pocket ID, and through it I can log into other services. So like for all the services that I authenticate with something like Pocket ID, I need one passkey.
Okay.
And in there I do the three passkeys, right? So if you use Bitwarden, then you sync your vault, you sync your passkeys. And yeah. So
Okay,
that's how I sync.
So hold on. So you can back up your passkeys in Bitwarden. Bitwarden will take care of all of that. So as long as you can log into Bitwarden, the passkeys will sync between device to device.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
So you could do that, and the protection. So you still have to unlock your vault to use your passkey, right? Like there's still the passkeys. I can't really say, it's not really backed up on Bitwarden, more like it's living inside Bitwarden. Like you created it inside Bitwarden.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that does make sense. So you use passkeys to authenticate to external services. You manage those through Pocket ID. Is that's what you're saying?
Yes. Not all of them, right? Like, so if I log into Gmail, like let's say I don't manage that through Pocket ID, but I still create the passkeys for that the way I explained earlier. I create one for Bitwarden and one for each YubiKey. And the passkeys are, like I said, they're like safer because they're unique per every site, and like a hacker can't really, like, even if he phishes like he breaches the site. Let's say they, like, you use service A and they get taken over, and they get the database per se of all the users. They have nothing. There's no password. They just have the public key of the passkey that was created for that site. So there's nothing really to steal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So can you tell me a little bit about why you like Pocket ID? Of all the OIDC providers that you could have went with, what made you land on this one?
Yeah, so I tried, I think I tried all of them. I think Pocket ID is the simplest one of all. It was super easy to set up. It's open source, and it does one thing, and it does it well. So a lot of them can do a lot. They're like, some of them are also like a reverse proxy in a way, and they can do other things, but they were a lot more complex. And like the creator of Pocket ID, I think he explained it well. He said, Pocket ID is a simple IDC provider that allows users to authenticate with their passkeys to their services. And the goal of Pocket ID is to be simple and easy to use. And he explains there's like other that are too complex, which is the reason why he created passkeys. And he said, additionally, what makes Pocket ID special is that it only supports passkeys authentication. And he said some people, it requires, like you kind of, it's like a paradigm shift of the way it works. But I think when people use it and they start using passkeys, they realize how amazing they are, right? And that's what I discovered myself. So when they're easier to manage, they're like everything is simple because there's no like passwords. The user doesn't have to enter a password, and you don't have to enforce like password complexity and all kind of things that come with passwords. And so Pocket ID, I'll talk a little bit about Pocket ID. Pocket ID is, at least how they say it, is a single binary. You can run it, you could just download the binary and run it. I think it runs on any operating system, except I don't know if it runs on Windows, but I think it does, but I never tried. Mm-hmm. It's packaged, so you can download the binary and use it, or you can use Docker. I use it in Docker, or you can use it in containers. I know some people use it in Kubernetes, and it does one thing, and it does it well. So when you set up Pocket ID, you can either take the Docker Compose example they give you, and it's very simple to run it, and it needs to be behind HTTPS or some sort of reverse proxy, because that's not because Pocket ID requires it, but passkeys usually don't work if it's not behind a reverse proxy.
Okay.
Sorry, not behind a reverse proxy, not behind HTTPS. So some of them won't let you send the passkey because you're not using HTTPS. Other than that, they have examples of how to onboard an application. So I'll kind of walk you through like the process of onboarding an application. So they have a lot of examples of how to onboard an application. So usually, as the admin of Pocket ID, you say, create a new application, you give it a name, let's say, I don't know, image. So you give it a name, and it generates like a client ID and a secret. Then on the application side, you have to say, I want to use OIDC, And it's different for every application. Like in image, I think it's in the UI. You go to the administration and you can configure it there. Some application, it's environment variables that you pass to the application. But essentially, you tell it, this is the server, this is the client ID, this is the secret. And usually on the Pocket ID side, you give it like a callback URL. So when you go and when you try to log into the application, it doesn't do the initial login. It sends you to Pocket ID, and then Pocket ID verifies that you are who you say you are, and that callback URL sends you back to the application to finish the authentication process.
Okay.
And I started like with one application, and then I kind of fell in love with it, and I just onboarded all my applications. So Home Assistant, I use Pocket ID. Image, I use Pocket ID. Audio Bookshelf, like everything that supports like OIDC, I onboarded. And that made it so much easier. Like, so I onboarded my wife so to onboard a new user, you create the user in Pocket ID, and it generates a URL for them. And that URL, it's pretty much like it logs you in. Like if with that URL, you log into to Pocket ID as the user.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can add your passkeys to that user. It also allows you as an admin to kind of like onboard somebody else, right? So you don't need, they generate the password and you have to reset the password after they log in.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's very easy for you to log in as that user. Let's say you want to onboard them with a YubiKey.
Mm-hmm.
So you log in, like you generate the login URL, you log in as them, you add the YubiKey as their passkey, and that's it. Like you give it to them and they can log in, right? So it makes the process a lot easier.
Can you talk a little bit about how hard it is to set up Pocket ID if you have no experience doing centralized authentication? You sit down at your computer. What is to be expected by way of a time commitment and by way of a process?
Horrible. I get it, but
so from like time commitment, if you want to go like the Docker route, I think, and you're familiar with Docker, I'm not going to include like the learning Docker in the process, but I think you can like start to finish, I would say like an hour or two to get like your first application onboarded. But I'm familiar. I think if somebody explained to you how to do it the first time, then onboarding like ongoing applications, new applications, it's a lot simpler.
Uh-huh.
And now like I have kind of like a package. So like when I go to a new client and I have to onboard them, like I have like the Pocket ID, the whatchamacallit, like I use traffic as a reverse proxy, so I have that, and like I kind of dump these files, and like the onboarding process is a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
But so once you're familiar with yourself with these processes, it's a lot easier. There's the part that I think is a bit harder is when you onboard. It's not hard, but the process is a little bit different per application. Is when you onboard an existing application that you already have users that use it, and you can convert them to, or like you can kind of convert them to use Pocket ID, so they don't have to initially be created like that, and that's a bit different per application, right? Like for some application, let's say the username, like you have to kind of match the login field between Pocket ID and the application, and sometimes you'll need to change the user on the application side to make the match.
Mm-hmm.
Another cool thing I didn't really talk about is in Pocket ID you can create groups, and you can assign applications to groups. So you can either create a group pair application, which is probably like the simplest way. Mm-hmm. So you create a group for image, a group for Audio Bookshelf, a group for Home Assistant, or Grafana, or whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then you assign users to those groups, and then you grant them. So by default, you don't get to access all the applications that you configured in Pocket ID. So you can assign them to, or you can create a single group that's by, let's say you have an accountant group. So you create the group, and then everyone in the accountant group gets access to application A, B, C, D. So that's another thing. And the user can be a part of multiple groups. Obviously, it comes with all the bells and whistles that require, an application that does authentication. It has audio logs, who did what, when. You can configure like how long the authentication lasts. So, you can say, like, let's say the company requires the users to re-authenticate every hour. So you could do that. You could do like once a day. You can do all that good stuff.
This has been really great. It gets a great idea to get started with those sorts of things. Can you explain to me a little bit about OAuth 2.0 is?
Yeah, so OAuth 2.0 is this new, like the new standard that I was talking about. That's like the sign in with Google, sign in with Apple we're using. And OIDC was built on top of this layer to kind of, I think, standardize that process even more, so application can integrate it a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to how passkeys. So it's kind of like it could be very, when you read about all these things, it can sound very complex.
Mm-hmm.
So passkeys is built on a technology that's called WebAuthn, which is pretty much passkey, at least from the way I see it, it's pretty much the same thing. But like sometimes you read in other, I think the spec is called WebAuthn, but the technology is like the marketing term is passkeys, right? So like sometimes you look and you read at the YubiKey site and it says like WebAuthn. It doesn't say, or it used to not say passkeys, but initially they're the same thing. One more thing that I find very, very helpful when I go to like clients and I have to onboard them to kind of like some sort of like no, I will go with it like the other route. So sometimes you want to bring like you go to a business, right? And you can't just tell them, listen, there's this Linux thing, it's super amazing, you should switch to it. And then they'll tell you like, oh, but my application, like, but I'm used to this and that and the other. So I find that a lot of them like have something like Active Directory, and they have like their machines joined to Active Directory, and it's very hard to couple them from like the way they work. But I find that when you set up Pocket ID and you configure, Pocket ID has LDAP sync, so you can bring the users from Active Directory into Pocket ID.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't. So Active Directory uses username and password. So the only thing it does is it takes the groups in Active Directory and the users in Active Directory with all their information, like username, email, stuff like that. It puts them in Pocket ID. And then I feel it's a lot easier to onboard them to services that are Linux based, because everything happens like in the browser, like the login flow. Once they see it, they're like, oh, it's amazing. Like, so some of them log in with YubiKey, some of them use their password manager, some of them use, their phones. So they have Android, they store the passkey in Android, or iPhone, they store the passkey in their iPhone. Because unlike Steve, everyone like, oh, I find it, everyone has their phone with them, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's a lot easier to tell them like, listen, all you have to do to onboard your account is just to scan this QR code, which unfortunately I don't think that process still doesn't work in Linux. In Linux, like I put in the show notes, I put like pictures of how it looks on Mac and Windows, where it tells you like, oh, sign in to choose your passkey, and you can give it like your Android device or your iPhone or your iPad, and you just scan a QR code to log in. I really hope Linux will have a simpler onboarding for that kind of stuff. But so it's easier to just onboard them to all these cool new applications that some of them don't integrate with Active Directory. Some of them are really good for like businesses, and it's so you start onboarding them to applications, and then it's a lot easier to move them to, like, let's try something else like Linux or something like that, because they're not tied to their, Active Directory anymore, like the way their computer authenticates.
Avri Chen-Roth, he is a senior DevOps engineer, former help desk system administrator, and an open source enthusiast. I guess this hour on the Ask Noah show. Avri, thank you so much for making the time to teach us a little bit about passkeys and about Pocket ID and how we can kind of leverage central authentication. We'll get you back on the program soon.
Thanks for having me.
What do you do with your cell phone after you're done with it? Some people donate it. Some people sell it on secondhand. Sometimes you just throw it in the recycling bin. Computer scientists at the University of California, San Diego are working on a collaboration with Google to deploy what might be seen as a rather unusual compute cluster. Instead of building this out of servers, they're doing from, you guessed it, 2,000 retired phones. The goal is to demonstrate how these devices might continue to serve as low-cost, low-carbon computing after their original owners have abandoned them for a new device. So the idea is pretty simple here. We've got a growing number of smartphones that cycle in and out of owners. And as people continue to buy new phones once every 2 years, once every 3 years, once every 4 years, see back to what I was talking about earlier in the episode when I talked about the glowing blue store, the glowing red store, and the glowing pink store. There's a bunch of computer scientists that think that there's a better way to use these devices after they're no longer useful to you. So Jennifer Schweitzer, she's a former PhD student at UCSD, and she's now working on a postdoc at Google. Ryan Kastner is an associate professor of computer science at UCSD. They are taking 2,000 Google Pixel Folds, courtesy of Google, and Google estimates that the average person upgrades their phone every 4 years. Wonder if there's any correlation between how often the shiny glowing boxes tell you that they'll give you a discount on the upgrade. I digress. The physical device itself and the battery is going to have some wear and tear because they bounced around in your purse or in your back pocket or whatever. But guess what? You plug this device in, you connect it to a network. Turns out, doesn't really matter if there's a little crack on the screen, doesn't really matter if there's a couple scratches, doesn't even really matter what shape the battery is in as long as it isn't, damaged and going to go into thermal runaway. Quote, it's just a vast amount of a sort of throwaway compute, and recycling is a terrible option for most of these smartphones. They started by building a couple of small clusters using smartphones to prove the concept. Since then, the project's scale has grown considerably. According to the Chocolate Factory, the motherboard that represents about 50% of the smartphone's embedded carbon. A lot of early testing using unmodified smartphones, Kastner noted that the team quickly learned it wasn't practical or safe. Some of the early meetings with Google, their engineers said that if you're going to put these in data centers, those batteries are a no-go. A lot of things are a no-go because they're just hazardous. So again, if you're not familiar with thermal runaway, every device we have has a lithium-ion battery, and they have one pretty major flaw. And that flaw is that there is essentially a membrane in between where the electrons go back and forth. And so you charge them, they go on one side of that membrane, they discharge, they go to the other side of the membrane. Every time that happens, as you would imagine, less and less of them are able to make it through because the membrane just kind of gets gummed up, right? If you try to force them to go past that membrane after it's been clogged up, it turns to heat. And that can put the battery in a state called thermal runaway. The other problem is if it gets punctured, you will have a thermal runaway and the battery essentially turns into like a mini flamethrower. So they don't want to have batteries in there because that will be a problem. So they strip these phones apart down to the motherboards. Some of the work was done by researchers, including Schweitzer and another UCSD computer science professor, Patrick Panano. But the full deployment was just this fall. Google said it's working with third parties to extract the phone's motherboards from their cases. Once the phone motherboards have been extracted from their shells, researchers say that the chips hiding in are more than useful enough for a variety of tasks. In many cases, the single-threaded performance of this chip is as good, if not better, than what you'd expect from a multi-core data center chip. So think about that. You want a 2,000-core processor instead of taking a single processor and making it into a 2,000-core processor. What if you just took 2,000 cores and connected them? So the Pixel Fold smartphone, which will form the basis of the cluster, is powered by a Google Tensor G2 processor with a 2.85 gigahertz Cortex-X1 and two 2.35 gigahertz Cortex-A78, four 1.8 gigahertz Cortex-A55, and a Mali G710 MP7 GPU. It has 12 gigabytes of memory, and early benchmarking using the spec suite suggests that 25 to 50 phones could deliver performance similar of a conventional server. Now, there is one huge problem, and the huge problem is the interconnect. So the phone motherboards were never designed to work together really in any way, shape, or form. It was designed to be inside of your pocket. Hello. So the major challenge is distributing a workload across a bunch of these devices. Most of these devices have 8 to 12 gigabytes of memory. So UCSD researchers are approaching this with a couple of different angles. The first is they're trying to target applications that can easily fit within a single device. So that is to say, if you could run it on just a computer, then just say, you, phone number 5, you're going to do this task. Phone number 7, you're going to do this one. The second is using Kubernetes to orchestrate container deployments across clusters of 20 to 50 phones. For this to work, devices need to be flashed with the Linux operating system, suitable for the job. And while Android makes a great handheld experience, it's not really intended for server duty. In the blog post, researchers note that Android includes the functionality intended to stop rogue applications from chewing up excessive amounts of memory and draining your battery. In the server context, these safety mechanisms are no longer necessary. Kastner told us that this is by no means an easy task, but the team has made steady progress towards getting Linux running smoothly on these devices, including support for the phone's onboard GPU. Now, it does lack some access to functionality. So, for example, the chip's integrated tensor processing unit remains quote-unquote elusive. Quote, clustering these devices will require networking the phones together. Normally, these devices would connect over cellular or Wi-Fi. But at this scale, it's not only impractical, it also has implications for security. So instead, they're going to use PCBs that are going to both deliver power and break out wired Ethernet jacks. The researchers suggest that EdTech grading and research workloads commonly run by universities in the cloud are small enough to run in the cluster without issues. So really, really cool project. I'll have the link for you in the show notes at podcast.asknoahshow if you want to check out the full details. But this is another example of where I think we're taking a thing. It's a perfect example of kind of what we've been talking about. Nobody knows how to leverage these devices. They weren't really built to be leveraged. They were built to throw away, literally disposable technology. So you go into the glowing store, they hand you the thing, you use it for 4 years, you go back, they tell you need a new one, so you get a new one. There's a handful of people that understand there's still valuable computing power with this thing. So they're jumping through all of these hoops because it was never designed by its creator to be administratively accessed and all of the rest of it, but it turns out it's more than capable of it. And so these researchers are doing this to try to leverage the power that you can get from a bunch of used smartphones. I just think it's incredibly cool. Hey, the music in our ears means we're out of time. I thank you for joining us again. Tuesday, August 4th at 6 p.m. Central, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Please, if you have any opportunity to be there with us, we'd love to have you. Tuesday, August 4th at 6 p.m. Central, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Come check out the 500th episode of the Ask Noah Show. Steve and I will be there in person. We'll record it live. It'll be a blast. One more episode before 500. We'll see you soon.